This is the first video in a series that will teach you Visual Basic. In Visual Basic, the computer operates a little bit differently than in other procedural programming languages such as C, which you can see on the screen in front of you. In a procedural language, the computer goes as quickly as it can from line to line to line, executing each command. In Visual Basic, however, things work a little bit differently. In VB, the computer waits to respond to events. An event could be something like a mouse over, a button click, a slider being moved, or a USB communications buffer receiving data. So there's a couple concepts that you should be familiar with before we go any further. The first item is an object. An object is any Visual Basic construct such as a button, label, timer, serial port, etc. The next item is an event, and that's something that the computer can respond to, such as a button click. The third item is a form. The form is the background for the program which contains your control objects. What actually becomes your computer program in the Windows environment. And lastly, you should be aware of properties. And these are the characteristics that define a form or control. In this course, we're going to be talking about Windows Forms applications, which are commonly known as the simple Windows program. We also have the option to compile our program for Android, but we'll leave that story for another day. So on that note, let's start up Visual Basic. I've started Visual Basic, and I'm going to start a new project. I'm going to choose Windows Forms app so that I create a standard Windows program. And it's important that you come down here at the bottom and give it an appropriate name. So I'm going to say my first program. I'll say OK. And here's our Visual Basic environment. I'm going to stretch my form out. This is your form. This is what's going to contain your controls and objects. In order to put any Windows object on, you can access them through the Toolbox. So I think I'll drag a button onto the screen. There we go, I have a button. And I think for this example, I'll put a label on the screen. On the form, I'd like to change the title of my form. I can change this title in the Properties window, which is over here. So I'm going to come down to the text property. The form text is actually the title of the form. And I'll call it My First Program. And you can see the title changes. I also want to change the lettering on the button. So again, I'm going to change the text property. There. Now, if you double click on any object, Visual Basic will automatically create the most common event handler for that object. So in this case, if I double click on the button, it creates an event handler automatically, which is most common to a button, which in this case is a button click. Now we need to tell the button what to do. For this simple program, I'm just going to tell it to change the text on the label. So I'm going to tell it the object I want to change, and I'll select label 1, dot, the property to change, in this case the text field. Notice that it's auto-suggesting. And I'm going to tell it what to display. Oop, spelling is always important. Okay. If I had any errors, I would see red bands appear on the side that would guide me to where I should resolve my problem. Now I'm going to save my program before I run it. The way I like to set up my projects is I have a folder under My Documents, Visual Studio 2017 and Projects, and it's going to create a new folder entitled My First Program. So I hit save. We'll ignore this warning. To run the program, just hit start. So you can see down below that the program is compiling and getting ready to run. And here's my form with the button. If I click the button, it executes the event handler and changes the text on the label to I Love Crosby Hall. Now, any good Windows program should have a nice, elegant end. So let's exit out of the program. In this case, we can only stop it by hitting the X button in the upper right. But let's now go back to our design mode. And you get there by choosing the tab at the top. I'm going to add another button. So I'll simply drag it onto the screen. Double click the button so that I can write the code that I want to be executed. The command to end a Windows program in VB is simply end. So I'll type in the end command, save it, rerun it. So now I can change the label. Whoops, I have a mistake. I should have changed the text on button 2, but even so, if I click it, it automatically ends the program. So let's fix that error. I'll click on button 2, I'll go down to the text property, change the text to end, and save it. One of the most beautiful aspects of Visual Basic is the fact that you can create your program, you can then publish it, which is what VB calls making an installation disk, and you can give it to another person that doesn't have VB. So let's see how we do that. I'm going to save it again just to be sure. Under Build, you'll see Publish My First Program. So let's make an installation disk for this. In the project folder, a subfolder called Publish will be created. I'm going to choose from CD or DVD-ROM, assuming that I would copy these files onto a Media. Not going to bother check for updates. And finish. As soon as Visual Basic is done, it opens the folder, and you can see under My First Program, we have a setup.exe. If I double-click that setup, actually, let me close Visual Basic first so you know that I'm not cheating. Okay, now I'm out of VB, and I'll double-click Setup. I'll install it like any other Windows program. So it's installed the program, it's registered it in the registry. Still works perfectly. And unfortunately it's out of bounds. But if I click on the Start button, you can actually see the program does come up. Let's see if I can expand the limits of the screen capture. Nope. And so that was a very simple example of creating a Windows program using Visual Basic. And we'll move on now to something a little more complicated. Thank you for watching.